Now it's time for Lefties Losing It, and I regret to inform you that the French women are at it again. This lot love nothing more than taking off their tops to protest, well, anything. This time a bunch of white French women are protesting racism and the far right by baring their breasts and mopping. I'm not sure that protest is working the way they imagined. Now, Pride Month is finally over, and what a month it was. Let's look at some of the highlights, starting in Toronto, where these lefties were losing it at what was apparently a family-friendly Pride event. Remember the good old days when first world cities had public indecency laws? I miss those days. Yes, some dude in a Bugs Bunny mask dangling his doodle in a pride rally. Not sure what pride there is in that or this. And in San Francisco, where anything goes nowadays, we had several school districts take young kids along to pride rallies. And this one, look at this clip. You can clearly see a completely naked man in the front row watching kids march. And staying in San Francisco, there was plenty more depravity and lefties losing it. And if you're wondering why police didn't intervene, well, listen to what these officers had to say.
And there's kids, wandering around the event. I'm not sure on San Francisco's laws or California's laws. Is it legal for nudity to be presented in front of kids?
Nudity is legal, yeah, within certain boundaries.
But what are the boundaries? Do you know?
Coupled with a lewd act. Yeah, anything coupled with a lewd act or anything being done for sexual gratification that involves other people. Basically.
Okay, but this event wouldn't be considered for sexual gratification.
No, if they're walking around and it's out, that's right. That'd be different than if they're masturbating.
So it's fine as long as they're not masturbating, if they're parading around, dancing suggestively in front of kids naked, that's okay in San Francisco. But it's not just San Fran. Let's go to that other lefty heartland, New York City, and see how Pride celebrations went there. You know what? There are a growing number of gay people, men and women, disowning this whole movement or calling out the victimhood mentality, including this young woman.
I recently got asked the question of, do I think that there will ever be true equality between gays and straights? When I say that, I stop dead in my tracks because I have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And I'm not even gaslighting them. I don't know what you're talking about. I feel truly equal to my straight counterparts, okay? I can do every single thing a straight person can do. I can get married, I can adopt kids, I can buy a house, I can buy a car, I can have a job. Is there something I'm missing? Because last I checked, I'm not being thrown off a rooftop for being gay. Not in this country. We are equal, babe. You have all your rights. Being misgendered has nothing to do with rights. It has to do with entitlement and narcissism. Okay? We have the same rights as straight people.
Now to the woman who could be president if they manage to invoke the 25th Amendment, but they won't because she's even less electable than the decrepit puppet currently in the job. Here is Kamala Harris turning up the cringe to atomic levels.
No, Taraji. Now, you know I wouldn't do that, especially not to a fellow bison. The real, ain't you? You know. So what's on your mind?
Oh, Madam VP Harris, I'm worried about the election. Women's reproductive rights are on the line. Our Supreme Court is on the line. Our basic freedoms are being tested, Madam VP. I know you've been traveling across the country. What are you hearing?
Yeah, girl, I'm out here in these streets. And let me tell you, you're right, Taraji. There is so much at stake in this moment. The majority of us believe in freedom and equality. But these extremists, as they say, they're not like us.
Yeah, girl, I'm out here on these streets. What the hell was that? And did the Veep just call half the country, indeed more than half according to recent polls, extremists? Did she call half the country extremists? You know, we mock lefties losing it, but sometimes they're just downright evil. And wasn't it nice to see one of Kamala's lies called out on X after she posted Donald Trump would ban abortion nationwide? Tweeps pointed out that information from the likes of CNN, BBC, the Associated Press, the New York Times, to name just a few, show that Kamala was lying. Joining me now is Newsweek's Senior Editor-at-Large and Article 3 Project Senior Counsel, Josh Hammer. Josh, today President Joe Biden lashed out at the Supreme Court decision granting immunity for official acts. He called the 6-3 decision a terrible disservice to the people of America and a dangerous precedent. The newly spray-tanned Joe Biden spent under 5 minutes reading a prepared statement from a pair of teleprompters.
Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States.
He then refused to take any questions before walking away. What did you make of that? It was quite an astonishing attack against the Supreme Court. Some very strong statements made there, but again, not willing to answer any questions, not willing to deviate from that prepared statement.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, he did himself absolutely no favors with that appearance right there. He did not quell any of the doubts that are mounting, not just among conservatives, but among Democrats as well. You know, the poll that we saw over the weekend, Rita, was that 72% of Americans say that Joe Biden does not have the cognitive ability to serve a second term. Frankly, I see that poll and I say, who the heck are the 28%? I mean, did they watch the same debate that I watched last Thursday evening here in the United States? This man is obviously palpably senile. It's sad, honestly, on a human being level. It's frankly just quite sad. But when it comes to the specific merits of the Trump immunity case, which is a victory for Donald Trump, it definitely is a victory. It's not an absolute victory, but it is the best possible outcome of all the plausible scenarios for Donald Trump there. It's very important to understand what the court did. There has been so much lying and fabrication here in American liberal media. They're saying that the Supreme Court has allowed a president to get away with bloody murder. Well, no, they actually really haven't. They very clearly said that unofficial acts that have nothing to do with your core constitutional prerogative can get prosecuted after you are president. But even more to the point, Rita, this line that we hear from Sonia Sotomayor, the liberal justice who dissented, this line that we hear from Joe Biden right there, they say over and over again, no one is above the law. No president is above the law. Well, do you know what the supreme law of the land here is in the United States? It's the Constitution. It literally says that in Article 6. It's called the Supremacy Clause.
Yeah.
The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And if the Constitution requires some level of immunity from prosecution so that the executive can do his job, then that is the law. That is the law. So no president is above the Constitution. That doesn't mean we know what the Constitution is. So the whole thing is just absolutely crazy. But Joe Biden is out to lunch as always. The only question now, obviously, is whether he's going to be forced out of this presidential race.
It is so absurd and so simplistic to say no one's above the law. The president has powers that others don't have. He can declassify documents. He can pardon people for whatever reason he chooses. So this notion that the presidency is no different to any other person, I mean, it's just simplistic. But what's the latest on these efforts to replace Joe Biden before the November poll? With your legal background, you know better than most the limitations of what the Democrats can do here. What are the chances that we're going to get a new candidate?
So I think the chances are pretty low. Now, the logistics of them swapping out Joe Biden at this point are very, very difficult. So you actually had So here in America, we have the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, which controls or rather executes the campaign finance laws in this country. I'm actually interviewing on my show, the Josh Hammer Show, one of the FEC commissioners tomorrow. And the same commissioner, Trey Traynor, who I'm interviewing, he actually wrote an op-ed for the Daily Caller on Friday, basically saying that the logistics at this late hour of pulling a candidate swap from a campaign finance perspective are very, very difficult because people who have donated to the Biden-Harris campaign, they have donated to the Biden-Harris campaign. They have not donated to a generic Democratic Party slush fund. So if you pull Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that money either then gets reverted to the DNC, the Democrat National Convention, or just gets returned to the donors. So if Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, or God help us, Michelle Obama, if one of them were to step in, they'd essentially be starting from scratch from a fundraising perspective. Now, Kamala Harris is the one person in the country who could possibly obviate those concerns because you could do that while assuaging those fundraising concerns. The problem with Kamala Harris, Rita, as you know, that she's less popular than venereal disease. I mean, she's just an absolutely horrific politician. She, no one particularly likes her leadership. People leave her office. They leak like a sieve to the mainstream media about what a terrible boss she is. So they're not going to do it. So I am increasingly convinced that Joe Biden actually is here to stay. And again, God help us, because it's not a pretty sight.
You're right about Kamala Harris. She's just floundering. We played some footage of her earlier and it was cringe-worthy. But in an effort to recover from that debate disaster, we saw the White House release this 33-second video I'm about to play. God knows how many takes it took. There's around 9 jump cuts just in this 33 seconds.
Democracy is the essence of who we are. We're the most unique nation in the world in that we're not united based on race, ethnicity, geography. We're based on idea. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all women and men are created equal. It's in our Declaration of Independence, in our Constitution. They're the two things that are the guardrails to make sure democracy is able to be sustained. It's all about being able to show up and vote, be able to have an opportunity to get a fair deal, get an even chance. It all rests upon our Constitution, and democracy is the vehicle and the method that holds that together.
Josh, does that fill you with confidence?
I mean, so I actually have not seen that video. That's my first time seeing it. I mean, the man looks like he's about to keel over and die. And I don't say that with any kind of joy. I mean, this is the commander-in-chief of the United States military. This is the guy whose finger is on the nuclear football. This is the guy who ostensibly is preventing Xi Jinping from going into Taiwan and just seizing Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company. And this is the guy who ostensibly is going to prevent Vladimir Putin from going further into Europe and Iran from going further into Israel and the Middle East. And that's what he looks like, and that's what he talks like. I mean, it's just absolutely appalling. When I was watching that debate last Thursday evening, Reed, I couldn't get that thought about Xi Jinping and China out of my mind. All I was thinking about was that surely in real time, somewhere in Beijing, people very high up in the Chinese Communist Party Politburo are having these conversations about let's seize Taiwan like now, or at least let's do it before November. Because when you have someone who literally looks like that, who exudes just such obvious senescence and physical and mental decline, what message does that send to everyone around the world? I mean, to say nothing of the American people who are suffering a grave crisis of morale as it is, but really the message to everyone around the world, foes, friends, allies, enemies, everyone, it's just awful. It's so sad.
It is, and I heard some commentary from very astute people who've served under multiple presidents about just how vulnerable the US is right now, because its enemies are looking on and they know they've got a short window of opportunity to do what they want to do under this weak, incoherent, lost Biden administration. And that just puts the country, and I think the world, at greater risk from the likes of China, Iran, North Korea, Russia, whoever our enemies are at the moment. I want to ask you about the House Republicans. They're suing for access to those tapes, those interviews between Joe Biden and Special Counsel Robert Hur, because based on those interviews, the Special Counsel decided not to criminally charge the president because he considered Biden would come across to a jury as someone who's very elderly with a poor memory. Essentially, he determined the president was not fit for trial. We know from Hur's report that Biden could not remember when he was vice president, along with a bunch of other important dates and events. Josh, what could these tapes, which the White House has blocked the release of, what could these tapes reveal about the president's cognitive decline?
Well, first of all, Rita, where is Robert Hur's apology? I mean, he issued this report, this 343-page report, if memory serves. It was immediately just utterly excoriated. I mean, Joe Biden gets up there on national television that very evening, and he's palpably angry. Everyone in Democratic Party politics is angry. Everyone said that Robert Hur was a far-right MAGA plant deep in the bowels of the Department of Justice, that he was a Trump plant. I mean, they had all of these silly and juvenile insults for him. They said it was a hit job from a former Rehnquist law clerk. He clerked for a Supreme Court justice who's very conservative. And they had all these wild theories. Robert Hur deserves an apology because everything that he said was just revealed to the entire world to be emphatically correct, that Joe Biden obviously is not all there physically or mentally. And, you know, you can draw your own conclusions about whether he's fit to stand trial, but certainly Robert Hur's conclusions were definitely justifiable, at least in light of that. But what they're trying to do right now in the U.S. House, Mike Johnson is filing this lawsuit to get this tape because they've released the transcript, Rhea, but they refuse to give up the actual tape itself. And you might actually ask what the difference is. Well, the difference is kind of what we were just saying, actually, which is if this guy is getting up there and he's just stuttering and he's taking long, awkward pauses there. Again, this becomes a national security imperative when you have the commander-in-chief who is just not there. And you're talking here about possibly invoking the 25th Amendment, which is our provision of the Constitution that essentially declares the president is incapacitated. You have Congressman Chip Roy of Texas who is talking about trying to get that conversation started. It's not going to happen because it's the vice president and the cabinet that have to put those wheels in motion. So it's more of a talking point than anything, but it is the proper role of the House to do that sort of check. They had a subpoena. Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, ignored it. What else can you do? You file a lawsuit. So it's the right thing to do. So good for Mike Johnson for pursuing this, I think.
Oh, yes. And there's just a world of difference between reading a transcript and actually hearing the backwards and forwards between the president and Hur. So, yeah, those tapes need to be released. Finally, Josh, before you go, this story is delicious. And thank you to CNN for revealing the details of this debate watch party that was held in Los Angeles. It was attended by the likes of Governor Whitmer and Kamala's husband and a bunch of Hollywood types. And now just picture this scene, Josh. Just a few answers into the debate, Rob Reiner was screaming about losing and Jane Fonda had tears in her eyes. How are the celebrity class dealing with the rest of the nation finding out what the media have known for some time, whether they've been honest about revealing it or not, that the president's cognitive decline is dramatic and real?
Yeah, you know, Rita, I think this past Friday, the day after the debate, was my single favorite news cycle here in the US probably in years, because the entire news cycle was just, A-list actors, celebrities, Democratic donors, billionaire hedge funders, and obviously all the liberal columnists and pundits and editorial board. They were just having this big public meltdown before our eyes. It was absolutely glorious. I mean, one of my favorite things about the English language, which Americans and Aussies obviously both share, is that we borrow nice loan words from other languages. And of course, there's the German loan word Schadenfreude, which means that you have joy at the suffering of others. And I have to say that my Schadenfreude over the past week, frankly, has been utterly through the roof, Rita. I'm positively euphoric watching things like this.
I can understand because, yeah, that mass meltdown you talk about, it has been spectacular. I would argue these people are almost always in a state of meltdown, but it got turned up to weapon-grade levels after that debate. And, yeah, just grab your popcorn and enjoy. Josh Hammer, thank you for your time this evening.
Thanks so much.